So today's class is about patterns. Okay, so think about in our human societies, we have limited pattern in the sense that often we like to have things which are straight lines, boxes. And if we look at nature, we observe nature in its natural being, we don't often see straight lines, we see other forms and patterns. Okay, nature has its own way of expressing. So today we're going to talk about some of the patterns that we can observe in nature, and then we're going to think about how we can use those patterns in our design to improve our systems. Okay, so it's important to think that patterns have slight imperfections that make them infinite in possibility. Okay, and I'll explain why in a minute. So let's just start by looking at some basic patterns that you will all have seen. Okay, so for example, we have spirals. Okay, spirals are incredibly important for our climate. We live on a planet that is not round, not flat. Getting controversial there.
It all comes out now.
Yeah, you're esoterical.
Special class today.
Yeah, we're gonna get really down to it, guys. What you learn at school is bullshit. Okay, no, we do live on a round planet, as far as I know, and it spins, and therefore we have the weather spirals out from the poles. From down from the North Pole and up from the South Pole. I guess it depends on where you are. But boom and boom, and it's spiraling, And those spirals, if let's say today we're in close to the equator in Colombia, and if we were seeing one of these spirals coming towards us on the Caribbean coast in October, we might think, hey, we're in trouble, that looks like a hurricane. Okay, a big spiraling event. Or if you're in the southern hemisphere in the Pacific, then that could be a cyclone, and they spin the opposite direction. Okay, like water goes down the plug hole clockwise and anti-clockwise south of the equator. It's true. Tried it. Alright, so spirals. Okay, what about lobes? Lobes are kind of like these arches. So here's a question for you to start things off. Okay, where do we often see spirals and lobes together?
In the sea.
Shells, yeah, you might well see them in shells. This is close at hand.
Trees?
Trees. I'm going to say it again, this is close at hand.
Our skin.
Our hands. Fingerprints, there you go. So our fingerprints typically are either spirals or lobes. And guess what? Infinite possibility leads to slight differences leads to infinite possibility. My words mixed up. Okay, so we know that our fingerprints are unique and we can be identified by them. But basically they're spirals and lobes. Okay? So moving on, we've got rings. Okay, well, we've all seen a tree stump that's been cut down, and we know that if you count the number of rings, it tells us how old that tree was when it was cut down, okay, or when it died specifically. But we can also know from those same rings on that same tree a couple other things. We can tell the wind direction, the predominant wind direction, because the tree is going to be bouncing on one side, and it's going to have more lignin, that's the woody material, on one side. That will give you an idea of which way the wind tends to come from. And also, if you knew the weather events or the rain or something historically, you could probably work out whether that tree liked a lot of rain, needed a lot of sun, based on how wide those rings were, and then comparing them to the year it related to. If you knew when that tree was cut down or when it died, you could work it out. So information in rings. Okay, and then tons of rings in plants and all sorts of things. What else we got next? So nets. So of course we've got the honeycomb, the octagonal shape, and very, very strong structure. Okay, honeycomb is sacred geometry, but nets we could also have, like for example on many types of tree, the bark, the outside of the tree is kind of like a net. Now you've all seen dry clay recently, I know, so you've obviously observed that when clay dries it cracks. So again, it's another kind of net system. Okay, interesting fact that if you've got a lot of clay soil, and what's good is that when it dries it cracks, but when it gets wet it seals. But really clay soil is kind of difficult to do much with, it's going to flood. But if you observe that when it's dry it cracks, then you have an opportunity to come along with some sand and some dry cow poo and some seeds, put it down the cracks, and then when the rain comes, the water can go down the cracks, the clay can't seal, can't close up because the sand is there, and then that little bit of cow poo and that little bit of seed, and then you can start to cultivate things in that very clay dominated soil. Okay, and you can start to turn it into something more productive through observing patterns such as nets. So clouds and canopy, well I know you've all seen lots of patterns in clouds. Okay, everybody talks about why are you seeing those clouds. Canopy the same. Any of you like to surf? Yeah, a little bit of surfing?
Yes.
Arnie's a surfer?
More or less.
More or less, yeah?
I'm a tryer.
You're a tryer? Okay, keep trying, that's good. Okay, so if you know you're a surfer, you know that the waves have pattern, you know, they have sequence as well. You know, that you get maybe it's 14 or 16, every 16 waves you get a couple of big ones, and then you get some not so good ones and you wait for the next good set to come through. So waves and all sorts of patterns within things like that. And even streamlines, be it streamlines as in water, but also in the air as well. They hit pockets of resistance and that turns them. So a river doesn't just go straight down, it eddies, it turns, even sometimes goes back. You know, it's going down in the middle quite fast, and at the sides it's going back again, it's going upstream. And the same with air, you know, it spirals and turns. Okay, so there's lots of patterns available and visible. A couple more we're going to go through now. Hopefully everybody's got those. Okay, the next one is a fractal pattern, a dendritic, or a branching pattern. Often these branching patterns have a number of times that they split, that repeats. Okay, so this one has split 2 times, probably meaning that this one splits 2 times. This one splits 3 times, so this splits 3 times. There's a tree around here, it's called the chicken's foot. Yeah? Because every branch splits 3 times. And so this one, you know, it's splitting 4 times. Okay? You get the idea, you can keep splitting. Okay, but often there's a repeating pattern. Okay? So I've said that these are trees, but quite likely you could spin them around and say they were roots. Okay? You could also say a couple of things about our human system about branching patterns. What could we say?
Family tree.
Family tree, absolutely. Okay.
Veins.
Say again?
Veins.
Veins, yeah, absolutely.
Brain.
The brain, nervous system, yeah. And one more I can think of easily.
The lungs.
The lungs, right. Yeah. So these are all branching patterns which are essential to our own ability to function. Okay. What about another one? I'm going to give you a little bit of a clue, guys, right? I'm going to add some rolling hills. What have we got now? Rolling hills, blue coloured pattern, branching. Everyone's looking at me absolutely blank. I'm going to just say it then. Rivers.
Okay, yeah.
You got it now, right?
It's
Okay.
different from
You've never seen a river like that. You're right. Okay. I'm going to make it a little bit more likely.
yeah, like that.
So up here, we should, when we're thinking about a river shed, we should think about everything as a connected organism. Okay? What goes on up here obviously has an effect here. You know, if I drop in a drop of red ink up here, it's going to end up down here. What's less obvious, but is also true, but what you do here also affects here. Okay, everything is connected. So up here where we've got high energy potential, okay, it's above and it's going to go down. So energetically it's got higher energy. It's faster. Down here things start to slow down, meander, you know, that meandering across a floodplain. Guys, it's called a floodplain because it floods. Don't build your house on a floodplain. That's bad design. Eventually a river will flood. Okay, maybe it's a 200-year-old flood. Okay, so you've got a pretty good chance that you can live your whole life without flooding. But someday, one day, it will flood. It's a floodplain. Okay, so it's inadvisable to build houses in floodplains, especially when we're going through climate change. And that means more extreme weather events, it seems. Okay, so probably that 200-year event becomes a 50-year event. So then most people live at least 50 years. Okay, so then you've got a good chance of being there during a flood event. So up here we've got high energy, but we've got low variety of life. Biodiversity is quite low. It's quite specialist up in the mountains. Yeah, so we've got high energy, but we've got low biodiversity. Down here we've got low energy when the river eventually hits the mouth and into the sea, and it loses all of its energy. These are our most biodiverse regions on the planet. Mangroves, estuaries, they're highly biodiverse. Okay, so we can say that this is entropic loss. Okay, it's an energetic loss. So as we lose energy, we gain life. In this sense. Okay, so you can also order rivers and, you know, patterns like this. So we've heard of the Amazon River, and that is the biggest river in volume, 3 times bigger than the next 3 biggest rivers. So it's, yeah, bigger than the next 3 biggest rivers combined. Huge, right? So it's an order 1 river, but so is the Rio Negro, which is a tributary for the Amazon. Okay, I just learned today, in fact, that where the Rio Negro and this other river hits, the Brazilians don't call this bit the Amazon. As international people, we call this whole stretch the Amazon, but they call this part where the Rio Negro hits another river. That's Brazilians for you. Okay? So we've got ways to order things, describe things. What's our next pattern? This one is also, guess what? Really important to life. Okay, just want to take off that corner. There you go. But put a little dot here, say that's a seed, and seeds, the life jumps up, jumps down. Okay, so extremely important pattern for the way that life explodes up and down from a seed. You can have a bit of fun with this shape actually, you know. we've just gone through Wimbledon in London this week. If you wrote Dunlop on there, you'd have a tennis ball if you wrap those two together. Okay? What about, make it slightly smaller for the board. I'm going to change colour. Okay, so what are we starting to see now? Come on, who sees a fat lady?
Ah, on the other way around maybe.
Yeah,
On the other side.
What to see?
like that?
Yeah, no, on the other side again.
Oh, like
Yes, but she's not so. She's nice.
that? Curvaceous. Should we say curvaceous?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people say. A lot of people see a curvaceous lady when I draw that one. But what else? How about? I can draw another one there. What are you saying?
Bones?
Bones. There you go.
Bones.
So
Wow.
our vertebrae, each of our joints. Okay, so this pattern's extremely important to us again. You know, without a vertebrae, we're slugs. Yeah, like caracol without the shell.
Ah, vertebrae.
Okay, even our red blood cells have a kind of a donut shape. Okay, so again, another super important shape. Okay, so now we're going to visually go into a forest, a place with lots of trees. You're there, right, guys? Picture it. Okay. Now, at the same time, we're going to go visually into a big agricultural field. In that big agricultural field, we see monoculture, one layer, one height. But we go into that forest, assuming it's a native natural forest, yeah, not something that's man-made and planted as one tree. What do we see? We see many different layers. Okay, so let's name them. We've got the ground, okay? And then we've got some ground cover, some small herbaceous plants. And then we've got some shrubs. And then we've got our first real trees, our understory. Okay? And then we've got some bigger trees, our overstory. Okay? And if we're in the tropics or subtropics, we're going to have some palm. Okay? And then we're also going to have vines. Okay? And we're going to add in a ground root. So we've got a root layer. Okay? So without thinking or getting too complicated at all, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers. Okay, so in nature does things in layers. Okay? But in our human systems, we like to just use one layer. So if we copy nature's design, then we can design systems with multiple layers. Okay, if you live in a place with limited space, okay, for example, in a city and you have a balcony, you have a limited space, so you need to stack layers. Okay, think about what can climb up, whatever, what needs more shade, what needs more sun. You need to be thinking in layers. Okay, certain plants will only grow a certain height, other ones need more space. Think about it, design it well, and you can have multiple layers. Okay, so here's a very famous example of cultivating in layers. Okay, which of you have been down to Bolivia and Peru? Okay, a few of you, yeah? So have you heard of the Three Sisters? You've heard of Three Sisters? Do you
When you do gardening?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it is?
Is it pumpkins, beans, and one other thing?
Corn. Okay, so we've got the Three Sisters. Okay, we're going to call it corn or maize, and we've got peas, and squash is the official term for the other one. Okay, so we've got our ground. we're going to grow our corn. Our corn grows up and straight. When it bends over, it's got a hopefully bit of fruit. Okay? And then here's its root structure. What we need to know is that corn needs nitrogen. Okay, it requires a lot of nitrogen to grow well. And guess what? Peas, being a leguminous plant, fix nitrogen. But they also are a climber, so they need something to climb up. So the corn provides the structure for the peas to climb up, peas or beans. And in the soil, the peas, being a leguminous plant, are able to produce nitrogen through their bacterial associations and then give some of that nitrogen to the corn. So they're both benefiting. Okay? It's a symbiotic relationship between the corn and the peas. So they're fitting one layer. Okay? But you could just do those two, but what's going to happen is that this ground layer, if you don't fill it, nature will fill it for you. It's a niche. Okay, so you're going to have to fill that niche, this ground level. So why not have another edible plant? Pumpkins and squash. Okay, they're going to grow along the floor, they're going to fill that ground cover, they're going to exclude weeds, and they're going to give you another harvest, another opportunity to eat. So instead of just having a monoculture producing one single cultivation, it could just be a field of corn and you just get corn. But now you get the corn, plus you get beans, plus you get squash. 3 for the price of 1. And that's just copying how nature does things. And this system has been around for thousands of years. Okay, the Mayans used to use it, and you hear about it. It's probably still in use, hopefully it's still in use by a lot of people. It should be. Okay, good system. So what we've also got here is something called companion planting. Okay, you've probably heard that certain plants like to grow together. Yeah, and they give sometimes a benefit to one or the other. Yeah, you don't need to be a botanier here, guys. You think, oh yeah, but I don't know, where do I start? Guys, you're IT generation, so you've got a friend, Google, and you just put in companion planting for whichever country, and then somebody who is a botanist or is a gardener has already done this, and they just put down a whole bunch of species, and you can just like fit them together. Okay, just follow the shopping list. So easy peasy. Okay, we're also going to call this a guild. It's like a good team. A good team will produce better results than the individuals. It's a kind of magical thing, alchemy. Okay, so these guys are producing a better result than they would do individually. When we start putting two plants together, okay, probably there's not much going to happen. Okay, 60% of plants are neutral to each other. 20% have some sort of beneficial reaction, and maybe 20% have a negative reaction. But we can actually, if we like to observe and do kind of scientific experiments, then we've got actually 9 possibilities when we put 2 plants together, plant A and B. Okay, they could both have a positive reaction, or one could have a positive or a neutral, and you can switch that round. I've done a, okay, or you could have a positive and a negative, or a positive and a negative, or you could have a neutral and a neutral, or a neutral and a negative, or a neutral and a negative, or a negative negative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Got it right. Okay, so 9 possibilities. Okay, so if you get a negative negative, well, that's really You don't want that. That's not at all useful. Okay? But usually if you put another plant between these, then it'll get rid of, they're like a parent going between fighting children, kind of neutralizes them for a while. But positive, obviously that's a very nice reaction, but so could be a positive negative. Yeah? So one plant benefits, the other one doesn't. Okay, think about it this way. You've got a very attractive plant and all the insects like to eat it. And then you've got another plant over here which is more attractive, but you don't eat that plant. Okay? So the insects like going to the more attractive plant, and so they eat that plant. So for that plant being next to this one is negative because it gets eaten. But since this is the one that you want to protect, planting this one is sacrificial. So a positive negative in this case is to our advantage. Okay? So it's kind of, we can plant sacrificial plants. Say that, you know, go over there, I'm giving you something, and you leave my plant alone. Okay? Okay, so next thing, just have a talk about patterns in the sense of indigenous cultures. You know, the indigenous cultures around the world, you know, for example, the Aboriginal, they've been using patterns to store information for millennia. Okay? They live in this big continent, Australia, which has these huge deserts, and yet they have to cross them, and they didn't have GPS, God forbid. Okay? So how did they learn to cross those deserts? Well, they did it. Okay, they figured out ways across, you know, knowing where the water was, where the shade was, where they could find food. But then they needed to store that information, and so they did it in their artwork. Okay, you look at Aboriginal artwork and think it's a bunch of squiggles, but for them it's maps. Okay, and often there's a song that goes with that map. So you need the two of them actually to be able to navigate across the desert. And that's where they could pass on information, you know, in songs, in art, storing things. The same for the Maori people of New Zealand. Okay, what are the Maoris famous for?
Navigate.
Navigation?
Tattoo.
Okay. Tattooing, okay? So, tattoos, right? So, this young man has a lot of tattoos, okay? And they're done in the nice, easy way, not too painful. But the Maoris, they had their tattoos done by hand and in quite a painful way. And they'd have them in delicate points of their body. So what happened was that at the same time they're having their tattoo, their grandma would be singing them a song. Okay, and that song would contain information about navigating. And so when they're lost at sea in their little canoe, shit, where do I go? And they're kind of lost, and then they touch their nose, and it was a particularly painful place, and it brings back the memory of the information that their grandma was singing at the time of that tattoo. And they, oh yeah, I've got to look out for that, that and that. Oh yeah, that's how I get home. And it worked, right? They're still alive today, so it worked. So yeah, storing information in art and pattern has been a great, invaluable way of storing things. Even a local example, the Caribbean slaves of this area, the ladies used to braid their hair using certain patterns which would tell other people who would touch those braids and be able to read the pattern where the escape routes were. Yeah, local escape routes, they would braid it into information into people's hair. Escape, you know, how you could escape, you know, if you were put in prison or something like that. You know, they were captives, right? So they were slaves. So they wanted to know how to get out. Even in our modern day culture, there's information which is captured as words sometimes as melodics. Okay, so we've got a couple of Brits here, including myself, and we come from a country that uses a form of measurement which is a bit antiquated, I would say. Okay, you guys being from other countries use something called kilometers, and kilometers are divided into meters. How many meters in a kilometer? 1,000. Okay, so in our country we use miles, and miles are divided into feet. So, my fellow Brits, how many feet are in a mile?
No idea.
I've no idea.
You don't know.
I don't do feet.
5,000. Because it's not
5,000. You're
don't
actually
use
pretty
it
close.
I don't know.
Okay, so I'm going to teach you a way to, if this comes up in Trivial Pursuit at Christmas, guys, and you win the cheese, you say, thank you, Russ, for teaching us this, okay? So, imagine that you go to work at 8 o'clock every morning, and it's, you're looking at your watch, 5 to 8, oh, I will be late. 5 to 8, oh, I will be late. So 5280. So 5,280 feet in a mile. 5280. I will be late.
Nice.
5.
So how can we use pattern in design to give us advantages? Let's go to a urban setting. Most people live in urban settings, so limited space places. We've got two neighbours, neighbour A and neighbour B, and both of our neighbours live in square houses, kind of typical, and they've both decided they would like to farm fish. Okay, so neighbour A and neighbour B, okay, so they haven't got that much space there. They're going to build a typical kind of pond, okay, and what we know about this pond is that it has, we're going to say 100 meters of edge, okay, it's a pretty big pond. And so the owner of the property goes to the fish shop and he says, I've got this fish pond and I want to put fish in it, and how many fish can I put in my pond? Because obviously you can't put too many in because it's only a certain amount of food and everything available. Okay, so he's going to say, how much edge have you got? I've got 100 meters. Oh, in that case you can stock 100 fish. Boom, easy maths. Okay, so our neighbour here knows a little bit about design and patterning, and so kind of like a cloud pattern, right? It's called crenellation, in fact. Doesn't take up any more space than this one. They're taking up the same amount of space, yeah? But because of this crenellation, this kind of cloud pattern, we've increased the edge. So now, let's say we've got 140 meters of edge. Well, guess what? Go to the fish store. How many edge meters you got? I got 140. Therefore, you can stock 140 fish. They've used the same amount of space, but this neighbour has 40% more fish, which is a big difference. Okay, in my example. Why? Okay, this is the important point. It's called the edge effect. Okay, so what is edge effect? Let's say this is a bunch of trees, aka a forest, okay, or woodland, and here is a bunch of grass, aka grassland. So in our grassland, so it's an ecosystem dominated by grass, and they would be associated species like birds, okay, but the birds would be specialists of the grasslands, yeah, and in the forest you would have birds that were specialists of the forest. But let's say there was 20 species of woodland species and 20 species of grassland species, but here where there's a change of ecosystem on the edge, there's much more variety, there's more energy, there's more food, there's more opportunity. Okay, so then we'd have another 20 species of edge species here. Okay, we have these guys and another extra 20. So this edge is super productive. There's more food available, there's more variety. Okay, so the more edge we can include into our system, the more variety, the more strengths we're going to have in the overall system. Okay, so it's super important. Whereas like a monoculture is potentially fragile, an edge system gives us strength and gives us extra yield. Okay, so the more edge you can put into your designs, the better. Okay, and that's why, you know, if the fish guy has more edge availability in his pond, he or she will be able to stock more fish. Okay, because there's more food available. Okay, go back to our two neighbours. Okay, and their two gardens. So they've both decided they want to grow vegetables. Good decision. Okay, this neighbour does garden beds like this, and what do we notice? We notice that this is where he's going to grow the vegetables in the beds here. Okay, but this is path. Yeah, you can make it a little bit neater. My drawing's quite rough. Okay, but the point is there's a lot of path there, right? And path means we're going to walk on something, but it also means we can't grow anything on it because it's a path. You're going to walk on it, you're going to squash things. Okay, so we've lost a lot of potential growing space. Okay, now neighbour B, knowing a little bit about patterns, knows of something called keyhole beds. Okay, so the idea of keyhole beds is this. They look a bit like keyholes, right? Have another one down there, another one there. Okay, so we can walk. This is our path now. This is our path. The thing with gardens and beds is we don't want to walk on them. Okay, we don't want to compact things. We want to just be able to reach. So these ones are called a double reach because you can reach from both sides. Like this table. Can everybody shake hands in the middle, please? Okay, so perfect. What that means is that if this was a garden bed, it would be perfectly wide because someone can stand on either side and you can shake hands in the middle. Meaning you're never going to have to walk on it. You're never going to compact it. You know, you're never going to walk on your garden bed because you don't want to. That's going to compact it, which is a bad thing. Okay, so you dig it one time and you don't walk on it, so you don't need to dig it again, which means the microbial life that we talked about yesterday is going to thrive without disturbance. Okay, so here our keyhole beds, the same principle. We can reach all of this, okay, from one place, but you do the maths, the actual path space is much less than all of this, so meaning we've got much more productive area to grow vegetables into. And when we're talking about cities with limited area, we need to be we need to use that space in a very productive way to gain an advantage, because space is very expensive in most cities. Okay, another classic design is the spiral. I'm going to call this the herb spiral. Okay, so we've got a spiral and then we've got rocks. Okay, we've got our rocks. What we should note is that at the center is higher than the edge here. It does this. Okay, so here is our center and these are our edges. Okay, so what we're doing, we're going to plant herbs, you know, the type that you use in cooking, and we're doing this in a certain way because we've created microclimates. Over here, you know, the sun rises over this side, right, and sets over here. So in the early morning, this is where the sun will hit, and we can place plants here that like, you know, the sun not too strong. Okay, up overhead where the sun is really strong, it's hitting down at a 90-degree angle almost, then we need plants that like a lot of sun. And again, over here, afternoon sun tends to be pretty strong, so you get sun liking plants. We could also add in, you know, a little bit of a pond over here. Okay, and this is going to increase the humidity. So this part is going to be humid, and this part is going to be dry. So think about it, yeah? Dry, hot afternoon sunshine. That sounds like a Mediterranean climate, you know? And down here, more humid. So again, different plants like to be placed in different positions. Some like the humid, some like it dry, some like sunshine, some don't. Okay, again guys, you don't need to be a botanist here. Just Google for your climate herb spiral. And people who know where to place things have drawn maps. And it's like following like an IKEA make your bed kit. Okay? As long as you can follow the map, you can, you know, produce a pretty good bed. And the same for your herb spiral. Okay? And if you were to unwind that spiral, this is actually about 2 meters. Yeah? Like 1 meter from there to there, 2 meters from there to there, to give you an idea of scale. If you unwind that, you've got like 10 meters or so. Okay, but you've coiled it up. And you've actually gained extra space because you've gained like that. So this is again a nice space-saving place. So those of you who've done zones, not all of you, which zone would you put this particular feature in? So permaculture will talk about zone 0, zone 1, 2, 3 and 4. So this is a zone 1 element. It's around your house. Okay, you don't want it far away from your house. In fact, you probably want it as close to your garden, your kitchen back door as possible. It's raining. You want to get the herbs started? No, it's too far away. You know, it's raining, but it's only 2 meters. Oh, okay, I'll do it. You know, so as close to your kitchen door as possible, and then you can have a very productive herb spiral. Okay. Let's think about some other patterns. Okay, so most of us are from a climate which is a temperate climate. You know, today we're in a tropical climate. Here we get 2 seasons. We get dry and wet. Okay, the temperature is pretty much the same all year round. The daylight is pretty much the same all year round, but wet and dry. But the further you go away from the equator towards the poles, the more pronounced seasons you have. Okay, so we were all born in a place where you get 4 distinct seasons. Okay, Morocco less so, but you've got, you know, summer, winter, spring, etc. Okay, so your activity, what you do in those seasons, makes a difference. You know, it doesn't make sense to go and sow a bunch of things the day before winter starts. Okay, because it's probably going to get frozen, or, you know, it's just not going to receive enough sunshine. We all know, we've been brought up to think that the day to plant things is springtime. Okay, and harvest is in autumn. Pretty much like that. That's the easy, straightforward way of thinking of things. There are exceptions, but pretty much it's plant in spring and harvest in autumn. Okay, and you get all the growth over the summer. So knowing where we are, in which climate, and how seasons work is important. Another thing is, there's a Japanese guy, he wrote a book called The One Straw Revolution. I can't remember his name, Fujuka, someone know this. Can't remember his name, Japanese name. Anyway, in this book, he talks about gaining an extra harvest. Okay? Imagine this, you've got this big tree, you're in the forest, big tree, and you get these little trees popping up. And they look and they go, oh, there's no sun. The big tree's taking all the sunshine. There's no water, there's no nutrients. Oh, I'm dead. Okay, there wasn't space for me. One day I put my head up, the big tree's just fallen over. Oh look, there's sunshine, there's nutrients, there's rain, great, I can grow. And I grow, and I survive. Okay? So, how do we think about this for our gardens? Okay, Okay, we've got a big plant and it's taking up all the space. So if we try to grow another plant underneath it and it's competing on the same layer, then it won't work. Okay, because one's going to take all the energy. But we know that we're going to harvest this big one at the end of September. Knowing that, okay, so we're going to have October, November, and then it's going to get cold. Darn, it's not quite enough time. I needed 90 days, not 60 days to grow something. Hang on, what happens if I go back 30 days before I harvest and seed underneath the big tree? Okay, knowing that I'm going to harvest it in 30 days, the first 30 days, the seed has energy, and so the plant, this new plant, doesn't need much things. So you can actually grow things underneath for the first month, harvesting a month later, boom, just when it needs the extra energy, it's available. So you've got a timing event. You know, you're planning things based on timing. So you've got patterns, you've got space this way, and you've got time as well. So you need to put all these things in together to have a really well designed small space garden. Okay, if you want to have a very productive small space, you know, roof garden in New York, then you need to think about all these different factors. Okay, and then what's the other big event that happens daily? Okay, the moon. Okay, so what do we know about the moon? We know that we can see it has a direct effect on water. Okay, we know that the gravitational pull from the moon creates tides. The sea goes up and down. What's less obvious, because we don't see it, is that the water under our feet is also going up and down. So in effect, the planet is respiring, it's breathing with the effect of that water going up and down with the gravitational pull from the moon. Okay? What we can also say is that the moon has a direct influence on plants. Okay? Simply put, when the moon is from the new moon until the full moon, so when it's getting bigger, the energy and the activity of the plants is in the top half. And from the full moon, as the moon is getting smaller until the next new moon, the energy and the sugars is in the roots. Okay, full moon today, guys. Meaning that now the energy will be in the roots. So we have an opportunity. If we're transplanting, if we're moving plants from their home here in a little pot and we're putting them into a new pot or a new place where they're going to be permanently, we're inevitably going to disturb their roots. We're going to damage them. So we do it now. We do it when the energy's in the roots, because the energy is there to repair them quickly. It's like having an ambulance next to your house. Hey, I just broke my leg. Oh, it's okay, we'll just pop round. We'll fix you up. Well, if you do it in the wrong time of the month, the ambulance is on the next country. Can you? Yeah, I'll be there in a couple of days. But I might not, you know, by then I might have died, you know, if I'm a plant. So we use the moon to actually help us determine certain activities like transplanting. Okay, you see a calendar on the wall over there? Well, it's done by the people who do biodynamics. Okay, it's another field of gardening, conscious gardening, which is from the Rudolf Steiner era in the 1920s, and from the German part of the world. Yeah, and so they use a lot of energies and such like, and they specialize in, you know, moon calendars, and you even find them for your climates, and they can really help you, you know, just follow it like a road map. And it's like, am I swimming with the river or against it? You know, you don't need necessarily to understand exactly why does the river go that way. You just accept that it does, and, you know, work with their energies. Okay. So some of them say, oh, today's a good day for fruit, today's a good day for flowers, today's a good day for seeds, today's a good day to cut your hair. Okay, so bamboo is a great example. Bamboo is a fantastic grass. Okay, it grows real quick. It's quite a sustainable way that we can, you know, build things with bamboo. But if you cut bamboo when all the energy and all the sugar is in the top half, guess what? That nice house is going to get eaten by beetles that are going to go, look at that sugar. It's like going to the candy store. Okay? They're munching away. But if you harvest that bamboo when all the sugars are in the roots and there's nothing much up here, it's just fiber, beetle comes in, no, I don't like that. See you later. They'll leave your house alone without really doing chemical treatments. Okay, so people harvesting bamboo know that, they should know that, and they'll harvest at a certain time of the month, even a certain time of the day, like 3 in the morning apparently is the optimum time.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of reasons.
Is it
Okay.
because at full moon the water in the soil is higher up, and therefore, wait, why is it that
At different times.
at different times of the month it's in the roots or it's in the above ground? Is it because of the water being?
Yeah, because of the moon cycle, right? Depending where the moon is, it's then, you know, every day you're going to have slight ups and downs. But the moon cycle is also having other effects. It's like triggering certain stages, maybe like a marker. So there may be in evolution, plants have developed just to follow the evolution. You know, okay, we need to have our energy there, we need to have it there. We'll follow the moon as a marker. You know? Any other questions? Good. There you go, guys. There's your patterns class for today.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.